The 8.7% increase in Social Security benefits for this year was certainly helpful, but was it really enough to keep up with inflation and to meet the cost of your living expenses? In this video, we're going to look at the actual numbers and then share with you some of the dangers that exist in the long-term stability of Social Security and Medicare. So the first thing I want to address in this video is the purpose of COLAs. Now, COLA is an acronym that stands for Cost of Living Adjustments. And the purpose of COLAs is so that people do not lose purchasing power while they're on Social Security income. And so why is this such a big deal? Here's why. Because 20% of all Americans are on some type of Social Security benefit. 70 million people in total every single month are receiving benefits. Now, what's interesting is 50 million of those people are receiving retirement benefits. Now, this retirement benefit could be from their own work record or it could be a spousal benefit. So 50 million people depend upon Social Security for that purpose. About 10 million people get their Social Security because of disability. They've been diagnosed with some kind of an emotional or physical disability, therefore can no longer work, at least substantially, and they're getting Social Security because of that. Another 10 million are getting survivor benefits. This means they have died, and so this would be dependent benefits or widower benefits. So there's a tremendous amount of people depending upon Social Security, and that's why those benefits have to go up, because otherwise we have 70 million people that are losing purchasing power because of inflation. Now, in addition to that, the sobering reality is this stat here, that approximately 40% of all retirees rely on Social Security benefits alone, which means that more than 90% of their household income is coming from those Social Security checks that they're getting every month. And then this recent statistic is 9 out of 10 retirees depend upon Social Security to make ends meet. Obviously, 40% of all people, this is their only source of income. But 90% of all people need the Social Security checks to be able to be sure that they have that proper standard of living. So the problem is inflation. And for those that are depending upon Social Security fully or depending upon it heavily, there has to be a way for those Social Security benefits to increase. Otherwise, those on Social Security are going to lose their purchasing power. And so there's some key dates with this. Now, prior to 1975, the only way that a Social Security increase would happen was it had to be legislation, which meant Congress had to approve any increase to the Social Security benefits. Obviously, we see the problems with that because then it becomes very political. And then what happened in 1975 to 1982, what happened was cost of living adjustments would then be tied to an index. And this is called the Consumer Price Index for urban workers and clerical workers. All right. And so they used a variety of time frames and different formulas to make those adjustments, okay, during those years. But then in 1983, they changed the system and we're currently under that particular system. So COLAs today are based upon this Consumer Price Index, again, for urban wage earners and clerical workers, and it's all based upon the third quarter. So what that simply means is for the months of July, August, and September, the government takes basically a basket of goods, the prices of a variety of consumer type goods, and they take those prices and they will look at those prices in 2021, and they'll look at those prices again in 2022. And so if those prices have increased, whatever that increase amount was, and that's why as we moved into 2023, they raised it 8.7%. So those goods that are being measured here that people are consuming went up an 8.7% in prices. And so that's why everyone that is on Social Security was able to get an 8.7% increase, because we saw this index increase by that particular amount. Hey, just real quickly, if you're finding this video to be helpful, you can like, comment, and subscribe. And if you do so, that'll let YouTube know that this is helpful information, and they'll send it out to others who also need to learn about Medicare. In addition to that, someone argued that another problem is that this Consumer Price Index of urban wage earners and clerical workers is actually a flawed methodology. And this is why. One report said it this way: because this CPIW is based upon spending patterns of workers, meaning folks that are younger than than most people that are receiving Social Security benefits. In other words, these are people that are still in the workforce, and they spend their money differently than what seniors do. In other words, this index overemphasizes spending categories that would be less important to seniors. This one is going to have an emphasis on transportation, on apparel, on education, but it underemphasizes the categories that most seniors are spending their money on, which would be housing and medical care and food and those types of things. All right? And so some would say even the way in which we calculate these cost of living adjustments has posed problems for those receiving Social Security benefits. So here's what they mean by that. Since the year 2000, now 23 years ago, Social Security benefits have increased by 64%. But what's happened, many items that seniors are spending their money on have risen by 130%. Therefore, we should have been an increase of 130% in our Social Security, which is really, the actual COLAs have been less than half of that, all right? And so that has posed a problem. So here's are some of the things that are troubling to us when we look at senior expenses. Number one, since 2000, heating expenses have been up 348%. Now keep in mind, Social Security went up 64%. Out-of-pocket costs, your copays and deductibles for prescription drugs, up 285%. Medicare Part B premiums have risen in this period of time 274%, gasoline 231%, homeowners insurance 163%, and a pound of bacon 162%. So these are the things that seniors are spending their money on, and so this is the basket of goods that really is a reflection of what they really have been needing increases, and yet that CPIW is gauging other items. So that basket of goods that they're tracking really does not reflect the spending habits of seniors. So what that means is the average person receiving Social Security benefits has lost 40% of their purchasing power because real inflation has exceeded those cost of living adjustments. So let's look at that 8.7% increase that we just received for 2023. All right. Now they said that the average person that's taking retirement benefits, because remember, we have survivor benefits, disability benefits, spousal, but the average person receiving retirement benefits in 2022 was getting $1,630 a month in their Social Security benefits. And so we had an 8.7% increase to that, which means that went up $142 a month. So in 2023, that person is getting $1,772. All right. But in reality, because of the basket of goods being measured has actually increased greater than these cost of living adjustments over the years, which could have happened and we would like to have happened, is to see a larger increase. And again, in order to keep up with inflation in 2023, that increase should have been an additional $400. And then that would have kept up. So that's what we're saying. We're saying that Social Security benefits have increased by 64% when in reality the inflation has been an increase of 130%. And that's what's really created the problem for those that are receiving Social Security benefits. To truly have kept up with inflation, their check amount should be what? $2,172. And then they would have the same purchasing power in 2023 as they did in the year 2000. Now let's look at one particular solution that is being proposed right now by some that are in Congress. Now this comes actually from a report from the Senior Citizens League, who actually have been conducting studies on how the COLAs have been keeping up with inflation. And they're the ones that said that Social Security benefits have lost 40% of their purchasing power since 2000. And we saw why, because of the basket of goods and services that are being measured versus another type of an index. And from their findings, it's for this reason that many lawmakers and experts believe that the Social Security Administration should calculate benefits based upon a different index, which is called the Consumer Price Index for Americans that are 62 and above, okay? And this particular index is Consumer Price Index, and they use the letter E for elderly. All right, and so this particular index has been available for many years. And so remember, they're tracking right now the CIPW, which is for urban wage earners and clerical workers. And so what they're simply saying is that this is going to be a different basket of goods that's being tracked for indexing purposes. All right, so this is one proposed solution. And there's a lot of lawmakers, again, that think this is really a viable solution. But I did some further study, and I can tell you this is really not the answer. Maybe in part an answer answer, but it's not the real answer. The reason for that is because we went back and looked at from 2003 to 2023. So this was the index that's been tracked for these 20 years. So by tracking these numbers, we have seen in the last 20 years 65.3% adjustments in that basket of goods. And so that's why we've seen the increase of what we've seen thus far in cost of living adjustments, because that's the index that has been tracked. If we would track this basket of goods, again, different consumer goods and services in there based upon more of the spending habits of elderly people, what happens is this index being tracked, we had a 65.9% increase. And as you can see, what's the difference? 0.6%. Minimal. In fact, I did the math on this, and this amounts to basically, if we would have been tracking this index versus this index today, everyone in the last 20 years would have $3.50 more in their Social Security check. So what is that? $42 a year increase. And that's what I'm saying. Though this is one proposed solution, it is certainly not the answer to the big problem that we have with inflation. So that is one proposed solution that's changed the indexing. Obviously, we've seen that that is not going to solve the major problems that exist. So obviously, some of these things we've mentioned that change the index, the possibility of a minimum 3% COLA increase every year moving forward, in addition to some inflation issues. But really, the bigger picture has to do with the long-term stability of Social Security as well as Medicare. Now, the way that we find out about these two programs and their stability long-term is from what's called the Trustees Report. Now, just real briefly, as we talk about the Trustees Report, by the way, I have it in my hand. You can certainly find this online. But the Trustees Report is this. It says this: each year the trustees of the Social Security and the Medicare trust funds report on the current and projected financial status of these two programs. Okay, so very important report. These are trustees. Now, just quickly about this committee, these trustees, it is to be comprised of 6 individuals, and those are defined as the Secretary of the Treasury, the Secretary of Labor, the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, as well as the Commissioner of the Social Security Department. Those 4, those are obviously appointed by the President. But then there's 2 other individuals that are to be part of this committee that are appointed by the President, but they also have to be approved by the Senate. And what's interesting enough about this, even though it's supposed to be 6 people in the committee, there's only been 4 since 2015 on that committee. In other words, those recommendations of the President have not been approved by the Senate. All right, so we have 4 people on the committee as they write this report going in from 22 to 2023. All right, and so here's what they say. The trustees' reports include extensive information about the current operations of these important social insurance programs and careful analysis of their outlook. The trustees say this: we believe the reports fully and fairly present the current and projected financial conditions of these programs. They go on to say Social Security and Medicare both face long-term financing shortfalls under currently scheduled benefits and financing. In other words, what is funding these programs as well as what is being paid out with these programs. Cost of both of these programs will grow faster than the gross domestic product through the mid-2030s, primarily due to the rapid aging of the U.S. population. All right, and so let's look at the details of this trustees report, and I think you'll see why I'm calling this the bigger picture, really where things need to be focused upon to fix some of the Medicare and Social Security shortfalls. First off, this trustees fund is reporting this. They're saying that by the year 2034, OASI stands for older adults. This means people receiving retirement benefits off their own record or a spouse. SI stands for survivor's insurance. So this is someone that's receiving dependent benefits from someone that's died, or maybe widower benefits. All right. So specifically, this trust fund, money set aside for retirement as well as survivor benefits. This trust fund, the reserves in the fund will be depleted by 2034. It doesn't mean that Social Security is going to go away. It just means right now, as Social Security benefits are being funded, how's that happen? Well, 6.20% 12.4% of every dollar that you and I make is going to into Social Security. Our employer matches that. So 12.4% of every dollar we're making is going into Social Security. We pay half, the employer pays half. If you're self-employed, you pay the full amount. So that's the income source for those particular funds. And what they're saying is now more is going out and benefits is coming in through income. And so those reserves will be depleted by 2034. And so what they're saying is that by 2034, they will be able to only pay out 77% of the benefits that someone's receiving through retirement or through survivor benefits, all right? And so they're not going to lose all of it, but unless something is changed within the system, someone's benefits can be reduced by almost 25%. So that's why I'm saying that's a serious problem. So we can talk about changing the index and maybe get a cost of living adjustment 3%, but we're really concerned about the long-term stability of Social Security because we don't want to see people take that reduction. That's almost 25%. And remember, we said 40% of all people, this is their only income. So can you imagine getting that kind of a pay cut? And so that's why we're saying this is the real problem. Number two. Now, we have a separate trust fund for those that receive disability benefits. Remember, if someone's diagnosed with emotional disability or physical disability and they're receiving those disability benefits, they could be 50, they could be 41, they could be 61. And so these are people that are not yet retired. They're not receiving retirement benefits, but rather disability. And so that trust fund actually is doing better because last year they said that they thought this fund reserves would be depleted by 2057. And so now they're saying it's going to go all the way to 2099. So that really is good news from the Trustees Report. And then that brings us to the portion of Medicare that really matters in this whole situation. And this HI stands for Hospital Insurance Trust Fund. Medicare is broken up into two parts, A and B. A is the inpatient side or the hospital or skilled nursing side. And what this simply means is claims come in, what they're saying is that by 2028, when hospital claims come in, inpatient type of work and skilled nursing for inpatient rehabilitation, the reserves that are there right now will be depleted really just within 5 years. And so again, same problem. We're funding Medicare right now. 1.45% of every dollar we make goes into Medicare. Employer matches that, so 2.90% of every dollar we're making is going into the Medicare fund. Again, going into these two trust funds for Medicare A and B. And they're just saying that more is going out than is coming in. Therefore, those reserves that are there presently in 5 years will be gone. And so what they say, if this system is not changed, 90% of all the claims that'll come in will still be paid, but there will be a 10% shortfall. Well, how's that shortfall going to affect people? Well, either they're going to have to pay it out of pocket or the hospitals are going to have to write that off and skilled nursing facilities are going to have to write that off. So that's what we're saying. This is something that really is going to need to be addressed by the Congress. And then lastly, that brings us to Medicare Part B, which is the outpatient doctor side of Medicare. It too has a trust fund. SMI, it simply stands for Supplemental Medical Insurance, again, Part B. And this trust fund is not going to be depleted, and the reason for that is because what happens is Part B actually comes from general revenue funds, just general tax revenues, as well as premiums that are being paid by people that are enrolled in Medicare Part B. This is 2023. The Part B premium for most people is $164.90 a month, comes out of their Social Security check, and it goes into this trust fund. People that are higher income actually pay more for that. So the point is we're funding Part B, and so it's not going to be depleted because those premiums can be adjusted and taxes can come out of the general revenue account to fund Medicare Part B. But what is going to happen because of this is there will be higher demands, meaning because the healthcare costs that are rising, consumers are going to have to pay more for their Part B probably in the future, and as well as there could be even higher taxes on Medicare Part B as well. But the whole point is this is really the big picture. These are the kind of things that Congress needs to get serious about as they look at shoring up Social Security and helping people to make sure that they're not losing their buying power, their spending power due to inflation. Hey, if you're finding this video helpful, I want to invite you to go right up here and actually click on a link that will allow you to watch what I call the Medicare Essentials Workshop. It's a workshop that I did that really is going to show you everything you need to know about Medicare from A to Z, how to enroll, when to enroll, and the plan options for you. So go to that link and check it out. So yes, we were excited about the 8.7% increase, but was it enough? It was not enough because we are losing purchasing power due to the problem of inflation. And so my counsel to you is this: as you look at retirement, preparing for retirement, or you're actually in retirement, what we have is we have 3 buckets of money. And let me explain these just real quickly, because really this is the things that we need to focus on. First off, Social Security, right? We have a Social Security bucket. And so for those of you that are contemplating Social Security, I would tell you that if you don't have to take, we can certainly grow that money. If you wait to full retirement age, you don't have to take less money. You actually can take your full retirement age benefit. Some of you that actually don't need that money, you can actually grow that beyond full retirement age at 8% a year. That's 32% that you can grow that money, and that's a guaranteed growth. Now, you have to live a while to get to the break-even point, but if you have longevity in your family, your mom and dad maybe lived to be in their 90s or something, then you may live long enough to actually delay taking Social Security at age 70 you want to take, because you've maximized the benefit. So that's the way to be able to grow that bucket. And again, if you have to take Social Security early, that's fine. Just know it is a permanent reduction until we get some of those cost of living adjustments. All right. Now, the second bucket are what we call defined benefit plans. These are basically pensions. All right. And some of you are going to have pensions, especially some of you may work for state or federal government. And so that's a nice bucket. So as you work at a company, the longer you work, typically that pension is going to go up. So we love that, because that can then be guaranteed income. And the last one then is going to be called a defined contribution plan. And this is what a lot of people have. And this is going to be your 401ks, your 403bs, your thrift savings plan, TSP, if you're with the federal government. But the point is, those of you that can contribute to these still, because you're continuing to work, I would encourage you to grow that bucket. Why? Because this money goes in pre-tax. So in other words, you don't have to pay tax on the income until you begin to draw those out. Those are called required minimum distributions. And so this we can grow by delaying. This, you either have it or you don't have it, but as long as you work, if you do have a pension, then that will continue to grow. And this right here, you have a tremendous amount of money you actually put into that. In fact, if you're over the age of 55, you can actually put extra money into your 401k, 403b plans. And so we'd encourage you to save, and save as much as you can, because this particular bucket right here, for the long term, possibility of those monies being eroded because of inflation, and possibly if the government doesn't make any kind of changes, we may even see a reduction in benefit as well. So do everything you can to be thrifty, to save well, live below your means, so that you will be able to enjoy your retirement years.